There are plenty of case studies that portray B2B influencer marketing as a channel that just prints money. Yet what nobody talks about are all of the campaigns that fall flat. For example, even though Perspective 6x their revenue thanks to creator partnerships, you'll see that they spent many months in trial and error before eventually finding a system that actually worked. And plenty of other people have commented that they experienced somewhat underwhelming results from B2B influencer marketing. So, like any marketing channel, it isn't a question of whether or not influencer marketing actually works, but rather why some campaigns fail when so many others succeed. So in this video, I'll share the primary reasons that B2B influencer marketing campaigns fail and how to avoid those mistakes. So the first mistake that causes influencer campaigns to fail is prioritizing reach over authenticity. And this was actually probably the most commonly cited mistake that I heard from all of the influencer marketing managers that I spoke with.
Following size, I would argue, is becoming less and less important.
To me, it's more like value of engagement and how close they are in terms of their audience and how engaged they are directly with their audience. I have seen that people that do have big scale macro accounts probably, and they're not consistent with their audience, that they lose that touch.
So instead of selecting creators based on potential reach, you want to select them based on authenticity. And when I say authenticity, I'm referring to their industry expertise and their genuine engagement with others on that platform. In fact, to help you out with this, Favicon actually has an authenticity score that helps you detect fake engagement. I also want to highlight industry expertise. So I see plenty of B2B creators who post primarily like lifestyle content. And while their engagement might be authentic and maybe their followers do like them and trust them, that doesn't mean that the followers actually trust their professional opinion. And this is a really key distinction between B2B and B2C influencer marketing. If you're buying like maybe a sweatshirt or something, you probably just need to see the sweatshirt, maybe you like and support the influencer who's promoting it, and then you'll buy it. But if you're buying like a 6-figure ERP system, then you want a recommendation from a genuine expert who's actually used multiple ERP systems. Now, if you are selling a prosumer product, like maybe a simple to-do list app, then I would say that those lifestyle creators can be effective. But if you're selling a higher priced product with a longer buying cycle, then it's less likely to actually work. The next mistake to avoid is exclusively investing in short-term partnerships.
Every time that I try to work with an influencer, my goal is to always work with them again. It's never to just do a one-off. I don't agree with that.
But why? What is it that makes long-term partnerships that much more effective? Well, first, creators usually create better content that converts better as they get to know your product more. So, for example, check out these stats from Tom Boston. He was one of Storylane's creators. You'll see that his latest post earned nearly 14 times that of his first post from an impressions perspective. And just because an influencer promoted your product once doesn't mean that everyone in their audience actually saw it. So for example, this was actually the third partner post that this influencer did with Vector, and you can see that a few people in the comments literally said that they had never heard of Vector before. And you also have to consider the length of the B2B buying cycle. One mention of your brand usually isn't enough to persuade someone to buy your product. And also, only a small percentage of your ICP is going to be in market at any given time. So having the same creators repost your product every few months is going to help keep your brand top of mind. The next influencer marketing mistake is exclusively doing product promotion posts with your creators. So instead, you should treat your creators as essentially like an extension of your team who can assist with community building, customer research, and even content ideas. And this is actually something that I learned from the team at Sephora. So they actually have their influencers regularly get on calls to understand things like what customers like versus what they don't like, where product trends are going, what people are asking for in the DMs, how to improve messaging, and what products people actually want. And I'm starting to see this in B2B as well. So for example, Zapier hosted a creator retreat where they did hackathons and just discussed AI to better understand how customers were actually using the product, and where AI trends are headed. This is also something that the team at Perspective does. So they have an internal channel with creator ambassadors who just share their feature ideas as power users. And they tell Perspective what it is that they need, and then the team at Perspective ships those features. I also noticed that the LinkedIn growth tool, Say What, has a community where a top LinkedIn creator, Will, regularly gives feedback to customers to help them improve their LinkedIn content. And while he does happen to be the co-founder of this company in this particular case, I do think that this is a really smart way to partner with creators and actually build community. Because if you do partner with experts who help your customers get better results, then you're going to have a lot less churn. But my favorite use case of influencer marketing is probably leveraging it to boost SEO and LLM visibility. So for example, Sarah Adams said that Wix now partners with YouTube creators to target high purchase intent keywords. And I've also seen brands like Hootsuite partner with creators to target high purchase intent keywords like best social media management tools. The next mistake that causes B2B influencer campaigns to fail is over-managing creators by writing scripts or just generally limiting their creative freedom. The head of brand at Storylane says it best. She says, "You can't buy authenticity and then manage it to death. If influencers have too many constraints, they'll play it safe, and the content comes out, well, fine. But fine is generic and forgettable." Now you can, and frankly should, have some guidelines as to what you want them to talk about and maybe some things that you don't want them to say. Because otherwise, the influencer isn't going to know how to actually position the campaign to achieve your goals. And I think the best way to give influencers creative freedom while also ensuring that the campaign actually converts is to onboard them the same way that you would a customer. Especially if it's like a product promotion campaign, I would have them actually use the product and then just share their experience with the audience. This is what Vector did. You'll see that their influencers really just talked about how they actually used the product and then the results that they achieved with it. Using all of your budget on one influencer is another issue that can cause your influencer campaign to fail. Now, the most obvious risk here is that one specific influencer doesn't perform as well as you hoped. And that really is quite possible given that, just generally speaking, larger influencers tend to have slightly less loyal audiences. But another consideration is that one mention from a big creator likely has much less impact than multiple mentions from influencers with smaller audiences. Obviously, the more times that a prospect actually sees your product mentioned by different people, the more touch points and therefore credibility you're going to earn. But another consideration is that the frequency of mentions can also impact your product's visibility in LLMs like ChatGPT. This is something that Igor, the influencer marketer at Ahrefs, recently discovered.
Just the frequency of mentions, I think that translates into better brand awareness as a result, I think, because LLMs, I think, pick up on that because they run into your product a lot more often than they would if you would just be doing expensive campaigns. And just those constant mentions over and over from different people, different countries, different audiences, I think that's also, there's an argument to be made in favor of those. And Patrick Stocks, our SEO advisor, he did a research checking which of our products appear the most in LLM answers, and Ahrefs Webmaster Tools coincidentally was the most popular one. So that is the product that LLMs mentioned the most, and that is the product that was mostly used in these partnerships campaigns. So I think it's obviously impossible to say if that's the reason, but the correlation is there.
The last influencer marketing mistake comes from Grant Lee, the co-founder of Gamma. So he's actually relied pretty heavily on influencers to grow Gamma to an astounding 50 million in ARR in less than 2 years. And he said that some of the biggest mistakes in influencer marketing are simply not giving it enough time or budget. So influencer marketing is a lot less predictable than traditional paid media, and he says that 90% of your reach comes from less than 10% of your content. So he recommends starting with a budget of at least like $10,000 to $20,000 a month and commit to it for a minimum of 6 months. This lets you experiment with many micro-influencers and test many concepts. Now, to really drive this point home, I want to also refer back to this post from Alex. So if Perspective had only given their influencer program like a month or two, then they never would have achieved the 6x growth that it did eventually deliver. So I would say that just like any marketing channel, influencer marketing doesn't just magically send you leads. But once you figure it out, I think that it can be more effective than a lot of the other channels, just because it allows you to instantly tap into existing trust and loyalty. That is, at least if you pick the right influencers for your campaign. And finding the right influencers definitely can be challenging, especially if the majority of them already have like an exclusivity contract with some of your competitors. So that's why I created this video over here that shows you how to find the very best underrated B2B influencers for your next campaign.